Right, we're recording.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt Bergeron, Chair of the Policy Committee. Um, Along with, as far as the other members of the committee, we have R.G. O'Leary and Barbara Collins. We have ex officio board members, student board members, Michaela, and Ellie. Yes, that's right. My apologies. Otherwise, we're gonna go around the room in a minute and when we introduce themselves. So why don't we do that first, and then I have a couple things to say before we kick off. Today's topic of discussion. So we'll go from my left.
I'm Jeff Avenzio, elementary school principal.
Laura Lachansky, fourth grade teacher.
Ellie, ex officio board member.
Michaela, also ex officio board member.
Dave Lawrence, high school teacher.
Kristen Haiti, high school counselor.
Lisa Cardillo, high school principal.
Barbara Owens, board member. Virginia Leary, board member. Jeannie Young, social studies teacher.
Brian Wood, middle school principal. Frank Free, superintendent. Amber Tozic, middle school counselor.
Great. So the reason we are here today is to discuss the draft policy for 47 is the number of policy rating systems. We will not be discussing anything beyond the purpose of this meeting. Is very important because it's to have the discussion and to get everybody's feedback and input into what's a very important policy in terms of the mission of the school district and why it is that we're really here. I just wanted to take a couple minutes to just kind of provide some background in terms of what this policy is and what policies do, as opposed to something else that we're eventually going to be working on, which is a regulation. Policy is something that sets forth at a higher level the district's mission and its expectations. I think of it as something that's a bit more aspirational in nature. It's a statement of what the board and the district want to accomplish and what expectations they had. In some instances, sometimes a policy will suffice. Sometimes an issue is not as complex as a policy will suffice, and that's why not every board policy has a corresponding regulation. If there's anything that I say, Frank, or RG or Barbara, please.
You are spot on.
Feel free to correct me. So not every policy requires a regulation, and sometimes a regulation may not be desired because of case matters. But here, grading, I think it'd be fair to say is we don't want to oversimplify the issue. And when you set forth a policy that sets expectations and aspirations, there's certainly going to be that creates a scaffold, and then the regulation fills in those gaps, provides further detail in terms of how the policy and the expectations are implemented and realized. So with that being said, there may have been some misconceptions at this point in terms of what the draft does, and it potentially being the sole replacement of the current policy. That's not going to be the case. As I mentioned, there also will be a regulation which we're going to be working on after adoption of the policy, and I anticipate the same sense having the same kind of feedback and important input from all stakeholders that are involved. And it's not only those that are here at the table, certainly those that are watching at home are encouraged to contact the board to provide feedback in terms of grading policy. We heard some very important and valuable information from our student board members through survey that was conducted. And I think that's going to provide a significant, provide some significant information and background for all of us when we're working with this policy. And so just with that, I just want to reinforce the fact that the board is committed to hearing from and working with all stakeholders that are affected by the draft policy, and eventually will be final policy and regulation. And we're going to continue to do that. In fact, even up to this point, my understanding superintendent has worked closely with the EPA, for example, in communicating with teachers in terms of what the intention is behind the policy. And it's our expectation on the board that that collaboration and communication will continue in the future. So with that being said, I'm going to let Frank take over. And I'm looking forward to the discussion.
One thing, Brian, that mentioning is Alpine Enterprise article and some of the misconceptions that were within that article that was there. So I clarified that and I worked with Shirley London to get her input and feedback on that prior to me sending out the email. So that was some of the clarification that came from that. Before we begin today, I do want to make a recommendation to the policy committee that we table this in January, so it does not go on the board meeting. I think after we get all the input, we've had valuable input and conversations from staff, from students. The last time we had district advisory committee, there's a lot of valuable input from that. So we're hearing a lot of different stakeholders. I think after today's meeting, you'll have further information to be able to digest and look into it. So I do not think in January, the January 5th board meeting, we will be ready or have a solid draft policy. I don't think it would give us enough time to take into considerations of the conversation from today and all the conversations up to that. So I would like to table, bring this back to the board policy committee to redefine and also have attorneys look at in July, and then come back and have that hopefully a final approval read in February for the policy. That's all. I just can't see the time frame working for January.
And I actually turned my page because I did have another point, which was path forward, and it was that exact same thing.
Awesome.
I do agree with you. I think we need time if we're going to do this, we want to do it right and take the time to get the input and feedback that we want, we need. So, yeah, I mean, that, you know, clearly that's going to be up to so we can find them and the recommendations.
Perfect. Okay, so next steps, let's look at the policy. Let's get right into it. So really quick, just so everyone understands, we've been sharing this policy. Please quote me if I'm wrong, Jeff, administration. You have shared this policy with all your staff, correct? Correct. So all staff had an opportunity to look at it. Lisa and Brian, I believe you had a Google Doc that went out, so staff worked within departments and gave feedback on that. So not only the leadership teams, but every staff member has had an opportunity to look at this policy as well, correct?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so I just want to clarify that for anyone who's listening as well. So then you also work with your building leadership team. So that's who's here. There's also representatives from that and against counselor, school counselor, sorry. Catch myself on that. So, and we kind of go through it. So what I was thinking we would do today is everybody would have their opportunity to have their discussion, share. You can share from your building docs, your conversations, and really it's yours, and I'll just kind of help kind of filter in the conversation ourselves. So sound good? So I'm just going to start up here, and please feel free to add as we go. Is it, Matt, does that work?
Yeah.
All right. So here's the first few areas. Any comments, suggestions, questions, anything you want to state prior to the whole policy discussion in general?
Are there any concerns in terms of what you hope is addressed or addressed in a certain way, maybe? When we start to really get into the modifications.
And one thing we also do is when we do this, maybe this would be the best way to do it, is the board policy, I mean, typically goes word by word, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, and really has thoughtful discussions at each one of those meetings. So that's probably, if people feel that might be the best way to go today, that's where we can start.
I'll just say, if, for those of you who've spent the time reviewing it, if there's anything that jumps out at you as far as we would affect that in the reg, happy to hear that too. That's next step, actually. It's a policy.
First paragraph. Anybody have any questions, comments, suggestions, considerations?
Can I ask a question? Sorry. The last bullet point says to evaluate the effectiveness of curriculum and instructional programs, which I think is it's slightly different than what we currently have. So is there a who behind that?
What do you mean by that?
So grades is saying that grades are going to be designed to evaluate the effectiveness of curriculum and instructional programs. So that at teacher level, building level, district level.
What do you feel would be appropriate? So there is no who, it does not specifically state who, so that is something that could be done within the regulation. So. Anyone else? I don't know, comment?
It's a collaboration between teachers, admin, and curriculum leaders.
I think the idea of grades is evaluating curriculum, so there's, I think the component that, and I know the board has said this, so please tell me if I would say in the front, is the purpose behind this is to give autonomy into the appropriate areas that are defined within the district. So it's not the board's decision to say the superintendent is going to evaluate curriculum, right? The superintendent has a director of curriculum, there are teachers who are head of curriculum, there are department chairs and leaders who do that, there are principals. So the idea is, how does that function with the hierarchy and organization of the structure? The policy should just enforce those hierarchies and controls that are already built into the organization. So this policy isn't going to have, I don't think, the who's. Now, the regulations could, and I think that's what Artie was saying, but I don't think there's a who on this one. Does that make sense?
So our regulation's different. We don't have regulations currently.
You currently do have
correct?
regulations. Yep. So F55 is a regulation, right? So like the elementary, like for specific things, for a process of how your grade is done when a child comes in, that is actually a regulation. That's the administrative procedures that are done. We don't have codified regulations for the district of how the expectations work.
What was this? You just referenced F55?
Yeah, so if a child at the elementary, middle school, correct, Dan, has, they can't get anything lower than a 55.
Oh, okay.
But high school has 50s, but only for certain quarters, so there's differences. So those are procedures, so regulation is just procedure.
And but those aren't, those, I think you should put some more, food regulations.
Right.
they're just,
Right. And the regulation in general will be part of the board document, but it is going to be developed within the scope of all the staff and stakeholders within it.
So when you use the word regulations, it's not something that we just haven't ever referenced it as such.
It can be.
Well, they might be new regulations, but using that word itself. So that's sometimes like a little bit like the
Yeah.
scariness factor.
We've
like
never
where
used that
it's-
word on our level. If
Yeah.
we say F55, we refer to a
call it
procedure.
A policy.
But so in the document that I sent out to you guys with I said what a regulation is.
Yeah,
And I said it's administrative procedures, right? Administration procedures.
correct. We're
So
just
that's
saying
all
that
it is.
we never use that type of
Well,
vernacular.
Language.
before.
Right,
So
because that's why we're here. That's
Correct,
Yeah,
but that's
so-
also why we're here, because of the fact that's, what we're saying is like, if you want to move forward with a policy like this, one of the things that was brought up in our meeting was like language. Like, we use different terminology at different buildings, and that would be, so like you said, it's not codified. In certain instances, that would be something that we'd have to make sure was clear as, what's the difference between regulation procedure, as you just clarified, so.
And the regulation, like, that's the thing that guides the district, right? So you could solve the administrative procedures on grading. It could be all of those things, but it's what does the district currently do? And the one thing that we did when we started looking into this is we could not find out. Everybody does different things. You couldn't find out where it was. The elementary school, different middle school, and raise your hand if you know this. You even might have learned new things as we were looking into it, correct? Right? So even the people that are doing the procedures may have learned new things because they didn't realize those were happening. So that's the idea, but this policy here is giving you the guardrail to start that regulation. The regulation then is going to kind of reel it in a little bit more, but it's still not going to define it. The definition is still going to be teacher autonomy or some things. And what I mean by some things is, let's use the grade change aspect of it. NISBA is very clear on their NISBA, New York State School Boards Association, where it's a policy. They gave legal commissioner regulations on the proper way to do grade changes. I'm going to recommend that's exactly what we do, because that's what the commissioner of education would say we do. So there are some things that you just have to. Right. And that would be, other things, lots of. Does that answer the question?
I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah. So anything else within the first two paragraphs and the following bullets?
Like one more example. You currently use Tableau. So that's a kind of a grade, right? Or some type of data assessment that's utilized. And how do you use that? Boom. We've already aligned with the policy. Does that make sense?
I guess we can move on to one of the next paragraph, no single method of assessment. One discussion, observations about that.
The next one, grade shall serve as positive indicators of achievement. Anything on this one?
A bunch of, Jeff and I got feedback from the elementary school at our staff meeting. And a couple of grade levels pointed out that positive shouldn't be in there. They suggested either accurate or just taking out the word positive because they felt that it might not be positive. I don't
In
know.
some cases,
Yeah.
it's not positive. Maybe
Right.
55, that might be
Yeah,
not a positive.
yeah.
I guess the reason why it was in there was we don't want kids to be discouraged because of maybe
Yeah, I
stop
get it.
trying. I think that's why we have positive in there. I mean, if it comes out, if it changes the meaning. It's nuanced in terms of how we will thinking of words.
It could be a
So-
motivational component as well. You're looking at that.
Yeah, I think that was part of it, was in terms of the
Right, so. maybe
discouraging.
So I guess my question would be like, what would be an example of a positive indicator where a kid didn't achieve a grade that they wanted? Because like I see it as like the grade itself is a number. Our job as the teacher is to look, say to the kids, say, look at this, this is the score you got, but look where we could end up. So it's got really nothing to do with the number. It's how we just take that information and perceive it. So like I can see where.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, no, go ahead.
Maybe it should be grading shall serve, like, because I don't know that it's like
That's
we're
different.
referring to
Yeah,
the number itself, but more the process.
So
Yeah, grading.
yes, I agree with
can
that.
I give you what the definition of a positive indicator is? Because we made it looking at this as educators and not as scientists. So maybe that's where it's coming from. It's a metric sign or measurement showing progress, improvement, or desirable state. That's what the definition of positive indicator is.
So are we looking at this as educators or are we looking at it as scientists?
Well, that's what we gotta look at right now. So like, I think that's the question, right? Because, and I think the language is giving you two different things.
But when
I think
somebody
there's
reads
another way to
this,
say positive.
I like
we have to,
grading
we have to
better.
define it. People are reading this.
Right,
That we're
And that's
looking from
where
the
I'm
science.
coming from. My view is, this is its purpose is to be a public facing document. And so the community needs to read it.
we gotta understand it.
They gotta understand it, and, one way I read it is, am I correct that if it were modified in this way, it still means the same thing? Grades shall serve as a measurement.
Either
Does
one.
that-
I
does
think,
that
I think
still-
Argie's was fine too. I think saying
Well,
it's,
yeah.
it's.
This is, we discussed words, like, that's what I'm saying. So please feel,
Yeah.
like this conversation of pointing out a word and then digging in, this is policy. This is what we
I
do.
think measurement indicates the measure could be low. So.
Yeah.
Because it could be high or low, but it's you're measuring their progress. And there are some kids who don't have progress in a certain trimester or, obviously I'm talking at the elementary level, so we are tracking it's like more minutia than like the actual like grade average. But there are kids in a trimester that it would be hard to show their progress in reading, let's say in a certain trimester, but you're still measuring it. So
And even there, I mean, it's very pointed out, really going on words. I mean, I could reasonably see someone saying, well, I don't know, are grades really a measurement of effort? Because I think that.
Are you asking me?
I don't know, I mean, that's a question. I mean, some people could say that,
Yeah.
well, just because a grade said, you can see the 50, is that really? I don't know, maybe.
I think
Down
like
that
for
rabbit
some
hole?
people, the 50 could be a lot of effort, and for some people, it could mean that they put in absolutely no effort. So it depends on the kid, so that's
It is
really
measurement.
hard
The
to.
measurement seems to understand.
Yeah.
Even, I like the word indicators, right? Even if you took just positive here, that grades serve as an indicator, right? Period, they serve as indicators for achievement, effort, and development within,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I also wasn't opposed to grades either, like, I understand shifting that word too.
Am I getting? What am I doing?
I'm
Do
just,
do we want it as?
I'm just providing the feedback, that's all.
I think
Just take out positive, but just keep
Yeah, just
indicators.
And then we can choose.
All right, let's-
I think it has an indicator.
you know how good I'm doing this.
Well, that's gonna be-
Yeah, putting in
Are
flash
we
positive.
getting rid of shells?
Will, may,
Just serve, grade serve.
grade serve, perfect. Done, okay. Alright, moving on. At least for people who are new to the policy committee, this is why you're here. Nitpick, go over, ask the questions, discuss it, have that conversation. This is what we do, like we've spent hours doing this, so.
Laughing, this is why I'm not on the policy.
Yeah, right. Dave, can I share?
Yeah.
Dave is a member of his own school board, so.
Yeah, but I'm on tech and facilities, like I avoid this one.
Not today.
Not today, no, I got wrote down, yeah.
I've been on policy committee for
For a long time.
almost my sixth year. It's great.
It really can be. All right. Anything else on that paragraph? Next bullet points. Lisa and Brian, whoever has like your Google Doc, if you want to share something from the voices that aren't in the table. Anything on those?
So again, I'm speaking on behalf of the teachers in the
Yeah.
building, not my personal opinion. But, somebody brought up that addressing students who are assessed on goals that don't align with their report card, and how. So it says, student proficiency shall be based on clearly defined learning targets, grade level course requirements, benchmarks for the content or skill mastery, for New York State learning standards, and then the IEP goals. So I don't know. This might be more, I don't teach a special ed class and I'm not a special ed teacher, so I don't know what the report card would look like for a kid that's like, I'm just saying in kindergarten and their goal is to like tell the teacher when they need to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Because they're just operating at like a completely different level than you would expect a kindergarten to operate at, so like developmentally. So I don't know, by putting in their IEP goal here, I don't know what the report card would look like. Like, would they get all ones because they're not gonna meet the grade level?
I think this is a really good point, maybe and I just thought of it when you said it.
Yeah.
This isn't for report cards. This is grading in general and the expectation of how students are assessed. So if I take that idea, right, and use
Okay.
that, like, if a child has IEPs and they have goals, then there are regulatory things with assessments that have to go along with that, part of
Okay.
the report home regarding
So
goals.
this would,
So,
so putting in this bullet point of the IEP would like cover that concern?
I believe so.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Yeah, because I think that's important too, is like, you're looking at this, you might say, oh, it's about report cards, and I just realized, so this isn't actually about
Okay.
report cards.
Okay,
Right, report cards are a component of it, but it's more than that, right? It's the assessment data of a student's whole person, how we
Okay.
utilize. Does that, am I
Yeah,
right? in saying
yeah,
that?
and for students with IEPs, there are separate progress reports set.
Yeah.
okay, okay,
With a particular frequency, so school counselors will provide updates on whether
Okay.
they're meeting specific goals in the IEP. So, yeah, I think this is more just.
Yeah, it's-
Okay.
yeah.
yeah,
Again, this is the more of the guardrail kind of component. This is what kind of encompasses all students. So if you're doing a K-12 policy for that, it's in there, but it doesn't mean.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm bringing up the concerns that like our
Understand?
staff had,
That's
yeah.
why you were invited.
Yeah.
But it's a good
job.
point because, but that's the first time we've actually considered that.
Okay,
So am I correct in saying like that viewpoint is the first time, the positive point was the first time we've considered it. So these are great.
Right, whereas for kindergarten toileting, it's not going to be something that's standard based, right? That's a social habit. And on the report cards, we're not focusing on that. There are social habits that, they could be graded on how they do that, right? So it's not necessarily a standard based report.
Anything else on those bullets?
So by establishing these bullet points, it's not actually necessarily relating to a change in behavior in schools. Like, it's just overall not going to change report cards, reporting. Now more standard based grading versus,
Unless you want something to do.
it does not, but if you
No.
say yes to this.
No, there's not, no, well, the board says yes to it. But none of this says that you're creating a standard-based report. Is there concerns with having a bullet about IEPs in the policy? And about students' individualized programs, or the fact that students should have individualized programs? I think that's a good question. Like, is there a concern with any of these bullets that people have, like, well, I'm afraid it's gonna lead to this? Right? Or I don't like that because it could end up being this. So that's where we kind of,
But I think to Archie's point, they're in place and there are program goals and individual goals, and they are they're monitored on the goals, and there's reporting periods for that as well. So I mean, it certainly seems like we're already doing it, and it fits within my perspective. It's very good.
I don't think it's.
So, well, when you're on that whole about standards based reports, like that, I think you have to. Regulation.
Right.
So,
With staff input, and I mean, those
Yeah,
are
so,
those are
but-
so complex.
but I guess your question is more like, does this change in the regulation?
So one of the, we met as a group, questions that people had was, okay, now that you're clearly defining certain points in the grading policy, does this have a ripple effect, change in behavior, or change in expectation, the change in what we're doing currently? I think that's where there's a little bit of like almost a fear factor and comfortableness, are we opening ourselves up to, what do we just agree to? Kind of thing.
So
So
the idea is-
understanding what this language means, where it's coming from, and really where it's going.
Yeah, and I think too, and I appreciate the viewpoint on that, is a lot of times people look at change and they say, it's not what are we getting, or what are we getting from this, or what's the benefit of it, what are we losing, right? And that loss factor is that scary part of this thing. I think with the way of this policy is, and Matt, I think you said it when we first started this, we're not taking away anything from the staff. We are giving expectations saying, what do you want, Jimmy? Dave, what do you want it to be? Do you want standards-based report cards, or have you ever been asked?
No,
And then
but-
the question is then, where do you want it to go? Like, this is the guardrail. that comes
What do
from
we
this.
mean by, I'm just gonna ask.
Oh, you don't want standard-based report card would be no more, it's what the elementary school has.
No more
You don't want
numbers.
to that.
No more numbers.
Just one more
numbers,
here.
no more GPA, things like that.
but it does, so like I was actually gonna go back real quick where it says, classroom teacher holds primary responsibility for evaluating student performance, determining grade and performance of the district, the uniform grading system. I think that got some of the people in our meetings a little nervous as to what is uniform.
You know, that's
So
already in
that
our
would be-
policies and in our curriculum. So some of these words are already things that you have that are already out there. So the uniform grading policy, you already have. It's at 0 to 100. It's the 90s,
Got
it's
it,
the
okay.
80s. Like, I think some people will hear this and go, oh my God, by the way, some of this language is language that you already live with every single day. So don't get afraid by some of these things, right? It's just new language that you're not
Yeah,
used to.
I
Correct.
think people were
Yeah.
thinking, am I gonna have to weight my grades a certain way and
Right.
everyone's the same? And we tried to talk about that.
And my recommendation for the regulation is that it's departmentalized. Departments get to look at what they want to do, because one thing we were hearing is social studies is not going to grade the same as math, so it should not be the same. So let the departments have those conversations and figure out how that grading is going to look and work together. Because that gives teacher autonomy, but it also gets it to the curriculum, and aligns to all those things.
Or just a question, so really, there's a lot of language in this policy that was already in the previous policy.
Well, not in the previous policy, but within the curriculum guide or
Okay.
within expectations that have been given already, or in other things, because again, I was trying to take everything we do and pull together.
And as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, is that what the regulation does is bring the sense of location. Expectations, standards, and policies that already exist in many different locations.
Yeah, exactly.
Handbooks or, the policy that sits in the principles.
Or in an email that went out 4 years ago that
Right.
people still follow. Like,
Right.
literally, that was some of the stuff that I found. Anything else? Does this help? Is this?
Yeah, I mean, that's some of the questions that got brought up in
Yeah,
our,
that's
our
fair.
meetings, and again, I think to echo what Jeannie said, if we're gonna talk about the elephant in the room, it's what you just said, is that teachers are really afraid about having autonomy over their grades
Yep.
and having the ability to assess the students how they feel like they've been assessing them because they feel like we've been successful,
Mhm.
that our kids do really, really well, and they're just worried that, you know, you take policy, like you make it more specific, it creates parameters, and that can create problems. So I think a lot of people didn't understand the fact that this is just an umbrella of policy that, and Lisa's done a great job of it, at least at the high schools, I can only speak for. She's mentioned the fact that we're gonna have regulations. So the buildings will create the regulations, we just need the policy first.
Right.
So,
And if you look at some districts, you're right. Some districts create policies that are very prescribed.
yeah, we
You
looked
will
at a
do X,
couple.
you will do Z, this will be what it is.
Yeah.
The board has been very clear and that that's not where they want to do it, you know, so they didn't take that route. It's been a route, and this is where those districts also probably didn't do this, right? Share their policy with all their staff, get the feedback, do Google Docs. So don't be, I get the fear component of it, and I think that's why I said that thing about change. It's not about what you get, it's what you lose, and that's what everybody's afraid of. And that's a kind of like almost the stages of grief that we have to walk through. So I want us to kind of be aware of that and say, look, let's not be aware of that. Let's look at what we're looking at now. There's no hidden agendas of, well, we do this policy, and I'm just gonna call it up, because that's kind of what I heard. They're doing this because 2 years down the road, this is what they want. I will tell you that none of us had that conversation. And every conversation that we've had regarding policy has been public and video. So like, no one's ever said, this, I want to get the standard-based report card, or I want this, or never. You know, so if that's a feeling of it, please put that away, because we're here for the best purposes of how do we help support the staff, how do we help support the students, and address the concerns and positives that we've heard over the years. Does that make sense? Good. Grading practices, because it is Friday, it is 3:00, and I know that we appreciate all of your times, but we could talk about this for 2 hours. I don't think anybody wants to do that today. So, grading practices, unless there's anything else. I will tell you one thing that I did is I've asked the attorneys to look at this, the bias resistant component of it. And based off of something that Rachel actually said too, is we need to be kind of clear on what this is, because explicit bias or implicit bias is two different things. And if I know, like, I'm going to do it because I don't like orange shirts, so I'm going to be biased against orange shirts, well, that's explicit bias. But I don't want somebody to do something and, like, let's say Brian does something in his classroom, and 3 years down the road, there's a complaint saying, well, you were biased. I had no idea I was even biased. So I'm a little nervous about that language, and I want to make sure that the attorneys look at it to make sure that, do you understand, Archie, where I'm going as an attorney?
I do.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't think about that, but in
Yeah.
reflection, I was there.
It seems a little hypothetical to me to break out explicit and implicit.
So I'm thinking there's gotta be a better way.
Yeah, let me.
I'm just afraid that it could cause confusion. Yeah. Again, but you don't want to also get into the explicit and implicit. But we said it,
I mean,
academic
it's-
performance, behavior, compliance, that's explicit bias.
I'll say it's hard to legislate like what's in somebody's head and how it's expressed.
Right.
So
Sorry for, that was something I wanted to bring up. Other things on this one, these 3 bullets?
Yeah, actually, what would be valid evidence of student learning?
Well,
You're all the educators in the room.
we usually, when we give assessments, we want to make sure it aligns with what you're being taught, which aligns with the curriculums that we're supposed to be teaching. So like, for example, AP, right? We take a look at what's in the AP curriculum for your specific subject, and we align our teaching to those standards, which then therefore we assess you on those standards as well to make sure that you're meeting that criteria. So like, actually, like, I don't think I have to say this to you two, but like some of your peers will look at a grade and say, okay, I got a 67, I'm terrible at the subject. Well, no, based on the assessment, depending on how it's given, it means that you are showing a level of proficiency. So like if we're just looking for you to pass, you got 65, you met the requirement. So, but kids are looking at grades from a different standpoint, right? They're looking at grades so they can go to college or get awards, scholarships, things of that sort. So how they see their grades might be different from how teachers may see their grades. So like that's why sometimes your teachers will get a little irritated. It's like you guys are asking for like an extra point here and there. Like they may be seeing it in big picture aspects. Like point's not a big deal, but the fact that you did so well on your test but got one question wrong, you should be proud of that.
Yeah, can I add to that too? I think another component of something.
Go for it.
And I don't know if you do this, so I apologize. I don't think you would. But let's say Mr. Lawrence is in this class and he gives a coloring sheet, right? And that coloring sheet, and he's gonna say, okay, if you color with,
Literally did it today. They had a test.
oh my gosh.
They got the color after their test was
No,
done.
no, but
so-
you but here's my point. So he's doing AP Psych, let's say, like, and it's not about psychology, but he's gonna give a grade if somebody finished that coloring test. That's not valid for the class. But if you're in art and you give it, it's valid for the class. So it really is also the type of assessment and what you're assessing to, because you don't want to grade somebody on a good notebook if that's not what the content is. Does that make sense? Is that valid? Not that you gave out.
No,
You gave out-
Like actually, like not that, but like your reading classes for econ. Like that, I'm assessing, did you read the chapter? Did you get the basic information? Your application clues are, can you apply it? And the test is, can you apply that information with multiple subjects going on at the same time?
Bullets.
Are you concerned about the word's bias persistent, or are you concerned about the word's app?
I'm concerned about right where you were. What would people say for you? What are the things that I can't control from this policy that can come up and be negatively used against me? That's all. I want to write policies that don't do harm, and I'm fearful that it's not clear enough. And that's all.
So we've had some conversations that we thought that maybe this part of the grading policy is kind of like don't use grades. So like this narrative is like you're late to my class every day, so I'm gonna knock like points off the grade. But then there's also a question note that says three factors unrelated to academic performance, such as behavior, compliance, or discipline. But then you also have a process criteria at the bottom that talks about ways reflecting learning behaviors and habits that contribute to engagement.
We talked about that a lot
Does
yesterday.
it
with Kathy,
contradict
right?
at all?
Let's get to that later. So let's bring that up. So let's go back to that afterwards, because you're totally right. That was a conversation that came up a lot yesterday. Before we get into that, unless you want to jump to that as well right now. Is there anything else about the motivational before we get to that? Because motivational was one that,
I just had a question of what this is.
what were the examples that came up yesterday at that?
So like we were talking about, what's that piece?
The student who said, the kid who sits there quiet.
Yeah, so we were talking about students that like, if teachers are grading for class participation, but you have a student who is very quiet, they are doing what they should be doing. They would be willing to participate on a Google form or things like that, but they are, just quieter in the class. Should they be penalized in their grade because they're not loud and boisterous and things like that? So the kids were questioning kind of what that looks like and how to make sure that it was kind of fair. Essentially, the kids were saying, how is it fair across the board for all students?
And they brought up a couple of things that they thought.
Yeah.
I think another component that was coming up in the conversation was if a student gets a 0 or they get a 40 or a 45 on a test, they might feel defeated. And then if they don't get an opportunity to try to re-show that or do it, is that motivation, right? Like that's still that opportunity. And I know a lot of people in this room, I believe, get opportunities to relearn, or retake, or reteach, or figure out. So that was the idea too, is are they getting those times to, is the grade at 45, and I'm sorry, it's 45, that's it. You don't get a chance to re-show up that you've learned the opportunity, and that's kid problem too. Saying, that's not motivational to me, so like, it's motivational saying, how can I relearn it? I got that grade, it means I didn't understand it, how can I show you what you did understand? So those things, and I think again, when it comes to looking in practice, and we said this around the table, we're not professionals. So when we were talking about specifically what it looks like, we were gonna rely heavily on the staff of those things. But we did definitely say is motivation is not giving an extra 5 points on your final average because of you did homework or you did this, like that's not motivation, right? That's not the key of this.
We go back to the bias resistant,
Yeah.
explicit. I think implicit is like PD subject.
Okay. I know.
To sensitize people to the fact that they may have biases that they are acting on that they don't really understand. I don't know how it gets incorporated into the.
I know, I'm just afraid that someone's gonna say, well, you were biased because listen, then becomes somebody's this is bias. I don't know, maybe
If
I'm wrong.
someone's biased because of something that's explicit and is
Right.
being expressed, then there are laws against that.
Yeah, exactly.
Deal with it. But
Yeah, it was just my head. It just wasn't sure. Yeah, I agree.
yeah,
I
I
just,
I don't see how, I've been thinking about it and I
Yeah.
don't see how. we can really make sense.
no, I just want to make sure that that's written in a way that is sound. And it might be. I might be second guessing this thing.
Since it's been raised in curriculum,
You want to get done?
What?
Oh, go ahead.
no, I'm just kind of stuck on, the reference to uniform grading. Cause I start to mull this over, for example, it says, right before second criteria, the district shall use a uniform grading system at each education level. You know, to keep consistent with what we say our goal is to keep professional judgment where it belongs. How does that jive with saying a uniform grading system?
Jeff has a uniform grading system. Like it's the
One
same.
through four.
It's 1 through 4. That's
65 through 100.
yeah.
That's how.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that line.
What's that?
I don't see anything wrong with that line.
And that's fine, I just wanna understand.
Yeah.
It is in the old one, right? Yeah. Yeah, it was actually, G actually found it in like the second line of the
Yeah.
old one. It's there, yeah. Yeah, it's, that's more of like,
Yeah.
that's more of
That's
the
all that you need.
uniform, yeah, don't look at it in the sense of it was
Each
in the
class,
classroom
so
or.
it's building.
You have to look at it just as-
Right, right.
Yeah, you have to have a uniform
Yes.
grading policy, and that is, you get an A, you get a B, you get a C,
Right.
you get a D.
Right.
You know, mastery, what's mastery, you know, even the state.
Don't
has it.
overthink it.
Thanks, Dave, you gotta stop rabbit holes.
I know, no, it's just
It's an affliction.
No, you're good. Welcome to the policy committee, this is what we do.
stay in facilities.
Listen, again, if anyone ever thought that we don't put a lot of time and effort into each word, this is,
Arguably too much.
yeah, so, thought processes on anything else here before we go down to assessment criteria where Jeannie was thinking. So let's hit process criteria. I know this one was a bit hot topic yesterday, so why don't you guys?
So one of the big comments from the students that I think hit me the most when we had a BLT discussion about this is that they're okay if teachers grade however they want to grade within their space. And they totally understand that each department might look a little bit different, things like that. What they were concerned about is how teachers communicate how they're going to be graded. So they want to know ahead of time that this is my expectation and this is how I meet that expectation. So the example was provided by a student, you know, I'm in AP classes and then I'm in regular classes. And in my AP classes, my teachers spend a lot of time going over exactly what the product is going to be, exactly what is expected of me to do this, and this. But then in my other, and they've gone through that, I understand it, and I'm performing really well and I have no concerns. But in some of my other classes, I don't know how I can go from a 85 to a 93 or, you know, what that movement looks like. The students really were focused on that being as clear as possible at the beginning of the school year. and making sure that, you know, they understand how they're gonna get to the end goal they ultimately wanna get to.
And I think process criteria, so product criteria, what we said yesterday, the deck, I think everybody can say is, product criteria is the most important, right? That's the big nuts and bolts of everything. Process criteria, like let's take AP seminars, right, for English. Socratic seminar is going to be, Socratic discussion is going to be embedded into it. So that participation is going to be part of your grade. So that's where that comes in. If you're teaching music, right, perseverance is going to be a huge component of that grade. Because if a kid can't get it, they're going to have to keep trying to learn how to do it. You grade for that. And they might only know 3 notes when they start. And they might only know 4 notes by the end. That doesn't mean they get an F. So that is that. So really that comes down to those department components as well, right? Because you're writing a policy for K-12. So each department might have different engagement or perseverance or completion of formative learning activities. So I get where you're going, but I think that was the conversation that came up yesterday. Does that make, because then bring up the points you were talking about.
So yes and no too. So I understand what you're saying
Yeah.
about that. And I think, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong with this, you were that, skills rubric that you were working on last year would kind of fit into the process piece of it.
It could.
Like,
I mean, I think that as we're looking towards, you know, the future, I think soft skills are something that might be part of the graduate, but I think it's,
100%.
so, yeah, I definitely think that there's a piece out there.
I just wanted to contradict with, the other, like, behaviors about doing assignments on time, or, about putting my last name on my paper, I just lost 5 points as I didn't, that kind of thing. That's not.
So, can I jump back to Lisa's point? So the first sentence in this section, teachers are expected to clearly communicate grade level or course expectations and
Behaviors
blah,
and
blah.
have
That,
great behavior.
when we were drafting this, I insisted that there be something in there to address that point of like setting expectations clearly for students at the beginning of the semester. And we talked about including in a reg something along the lines of like teachers will distribute during the first X number of days of class, a syllabus containing the following information, right? So that it's very clear as to like what the course expectations are, how your grades determined, all of those things. So I think to amplify your point, like I was thinking that would be done in a reg, building off of this first sentence.
Yeah.
Here.
And we even talked, we've gone so far as to talk to Sean and to say, how could we link this to their Google Classroom so it could be on there so it's easy to understand, so. we're thinking of that.
And I think you guys are starting to see how the alignment of the conversations that we've been having within your buildings hopefully align with where the policy is going. I guess so. Other things on that? I did add.
Sorry.
I added I see where the contradiction, right? It's like, we're saying don't grade for behavior or adding in for homework on time, but then if we're saying engagement, what does that look like? So making sure that that's really clear and concise. Does anyone have a suggestion for rewording that?
And up above, you say grades should reflect what students know and able to do.
So do you have a suggestion? So you don't want to add up. Throw a dart right here and see if we can throw in a different line here. Do something fun.
I don't think it's a bad thing to have the different criteria, but I know we were working last year talking about soft skills rubric that, maybe your process criteria isn't actually embedded in your product criteria. Maybe they're two separate reports.
But that can become your departmental conversation too, right? Because
If like, in all honesty, and again, I know this isn't linked to partners, but it's the only way I can kind of think to explain it. Product criteria to me is the grade that the kids receive because it shows what they are able to do. The comments are the process criteria, which means we never really had a standardized way of doing that. It's like, okay, this is, I always try to hit those 4 different things. So that's where the soft skills would come into play. So you have the grade, this is how you've been doing on all your assessments, this is what you know. But then here is the other rubric where it says like, okay, you have you get a 3 for this soft skill, you get a 4 for this soft skill. again, I agree with the opening the can of worms. 'Cause I can see some of our colleagues flipping out, being like, like,
You're asking me
but
to do
you're
more.
asking me to do more work, but it's not really more work because there is an expectation you're supposed to put comments in with your grades. So
Well, I think if our comments aren't working, which is what we've heard, is that we can make new comments in the portal and
Yeah.
then we can adjust those. So
But if we're talking about effective feedback, I'm sorry, but like I just gotta say, like, effective feedback is that, right? What you just said is effective feedback, so it aligns. So that's something that's, I just, light bulb went up, I go, oh, now I see.
I really like the idea of like a rubric based, again, more work, but
That's
rubric
regulation.
based.
I don't know if it's
Yeah.
more work though. I mean, it's literally like you just have to
I
have
think it's more
evidence.
valuable though,
It
right?
is.
Like I just had a conversation with a parent who said, my kid is not doing well in class, but yet the report card comments are all so positive. I don't understand.
Well,
I don't
we get that wrong, right? It's a
Yeah.
pleasure to have a kid,
Yes,
pleasure to
yes,
have in class,
yes.
but a kid can be a pleasure to have in class and not be doing well
Yeah.
numerically in the class.
But
So
but this is where, and this is what I love, because the policy is allowing you to have these conversations about your regulations and your processes, right? This is the goal of the policy. Is to get you to start thinking.
Mhm.
So are you good with the language? So that's the question.
I guess I'm struggling with if, to Jamie's point, followable days comment, like if the grade is not supposed to reflect.
Right.
Right? Necessarily. Then process, those things sound a bit like effort. I think what we were thinking of was process is like, are you engaged in the learning process? Even if the result isn't a 95, right? Like,
and that's going back to the thing, like a kid definitely can be engaged and be a pleasure to have in class, have an excellent attitude and motivation, but have a 70.
Can I go back to the sentence stuff that's above it? For the assessment criteria, I think we're missing the point a little bit. Teachers are expected to clearly communicate grade level and course expectations. The evidence used to verify learning, that doesn't mean grade, right? And the criteria for evaluating that evidence. Students' assessment and grade reporting shall be based on learning criteria aligned with the following guidelines. So there's where that question is that sentence there, I think, is the one that's killing it. The first one's not, right? Because that's about feedback, understanding, knew where it is, but
yeah.
the grade wording shall be based on learning criteria aligned, maybe is where it's throwing us off. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think that's a good point. These are.
Well, Arjun, you go back to
Yes.
second piece. I don't understand that whole, do we have any special grade teachers here? Like when, P, music, like a lot of their grade is effort based. I
Right.
believe,
All of it.
correct? That-
Right.
Right, so, and, I think the policy wants to encompass everyone, right, so I think that, I'm not saying that you guys are saying remove process criteria. But, if that process criteria wasn't in there, then that might have encompassed special area teachers, maybe need to be tweaked, does that make sense?
Well, what about reading? Right? I mean, Dave, you just said you give out something to make sure that the kid is reading, right?
Mhm.
So isn't reading process criteria? Like you have to be able to read in order to learn this question. So maybe that could be, I was just thinking like from that point is if the student isn't reading and they're assigned reading, then they're not going to get it. So that's behavior.
Can we also can we interpret that to say, I mean, it says such as engagement. Those are examples of, those
Yes.
are not
But,
bound
You can
criteria.
get rid of the examples altogether if that's the.
So like it does keep it open, right? Such as, these are examples of,
Is it the examples that are throwing people off? Like say you take away the examples.
I would almost say yes, only because completion of formative.
I think that's what
learning
it's people getting.
activities, and then you're getting into
It's
that whole
nitty-gritty.
bias resistance.
Yeah.
I can't control what's happening outside this classroom, some little child and go home to, we've been supporting them, and if they didn't go home with the homework done, I'm not gonna take points. I can take information.
So I think that's where, and I think, is that where your contradictory point is right there? You think? Yeah.
yeah, just get rid of it.
Do you want to get rid of the board, or do you want me to put a note on it? That is truly important, as you will see. And just so y'all understand this, I can't make, it's the board's decision to change it, that is not mine.
Highlighted the main question.
All right, all right. thank
And
you.
I hear it.
Yeah, I think we gotta digest it more, but I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm inclined to delete everything after the.
That's what I'm thinking too, right? Let's just delete it.
Then we can just-
Yeah, let's delete it. Good, look at that.
Progress.
Jeannie, we're deleting it because of you.
Frank, you
Done.
deleted the whole document.
Huh?
Kidding.
I've done that before.
No, great.
Undo. I have done that. There's things on this one. Reporting student progress then? Are we moving on? I'll take this one, the interim reports. That was my bad. I made that mistake. So, Dave, I think middle school and high school brought that up with that. You have the 3 and 6 week thing. I wrote interim reports. Yeah, that was my bad. I took that right out after Lisa told me. So I'm like, oops, made that mistake. So that is my fault.
And then for interim reports at the elementary school, people had questions, staff members had questions about it, but like Jeff and I just had a side conversation. I think that's in the regulations.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that yesterday, Jeff. You want
Yeah.
the district advisory. So again, I think so people may not know this. We've talked about this policy everywhere and had so many stakeholder inputs. So district advisory committee talked about this yesterday a lot. Before you leave, do you have anything you want to add that you didn't get a chance to add?
Don't think so, but I'm gonna look on this online and I'll tell you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good weekend, Ellie.
Yeah, so that was one thing that came up at district advisory was how it works with the elementary school.
Okay, and the other thing that the elementary staff brought up is it says parent-teacher conferences shall be scheduled regularly at the elementary level. And right now, we only have a specific time to do them in the fall. We even got rid of the March. Last year, we got rid of the March day.
So, but yes.
Yeah.
So by definition, so the way it works at the elementary school is trimester 1, it's mandatory parent teacher conferences. So all parents are expected to come in and meet with the teachers.
Right.
And we offer them both virtual and in person. We used to have a half day in March, and again, that half day in March was always as needed. So we got rid of the actual half day, but it's still, if teachers need to meet with parents or have concerns that they want to have parent teacher conferences, then we provide coverage for them to have those meetings. So the half day is gone, but the need for those conferences, if necessary, is still available.
Well, and I think like the supplemental communication, I mean, obviously, any teacher that's doing their due diligence is notifying parents if there's problems, whether it's behavior or academic. But I think the language there that parent-teacher conferences shall be scheduled regularly at the elementary level made the elementary teachers feel like they could just be
Yeah.
scheduled like anytime and they
I
wouldn't
thought I
have
took that out. I
control.
didn't take that out.
They wouldn't have control over it. So that was the concern
That was
there.
a question, Kelly.
Yeah, I don't think the board intended to change anything that you're doing as far as
Where was
parent
that,
teacher
Laura?
conferences.
It's
Um,
under the second bullet.
Second bullet.
Yeah, parent-teacher
Conferences
conferences shall be scheduled regularly at the elementary level. So
Well, and I will say that elementary teachers do
Jeff, what is
frequently
the,
schedule.
what is the current practice? How about that?
Yeah, so mandatory parent teacher conferences after the first trimester. Okay, yeah, and then, I mean, throughout the year, teachers schedule parent teacher conferences on their own.
right, but I
as
feel like
needed.
that's like the supplemental, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then the intent for the March, we used to have a March half day, which again was as needed for teachers to schedule. And so we did away with the actual half day. And actually, we did away with the half day because the feedback from staff was because they didn't have as many, didn't need the full half day. But we wanted to keep in there that if they need time, then we would get coverage for the teachers so that they could schedule those.
How about if we change it to parent teacher conferences will be scheduled following the first trimester and as needed at the elementary level.
Yeah.
And as needed at the secondary level.
Perfect. I think that sounds great. Yeah. You agree with that?
the supplemental communication component, is there something in there, Laura, that you mentioned?
No, I was just saying like the as needed part,
Yeah.
like comes into play
Yeah,
where
yeah.
in that supplemental
Let's
communication.
fix it. Thank you.
You're changing the interim reports, right? So we're not-
That was, I made that suggestion already, and I just gotta take the suggestion. So. There, so interim reports, like, make sure that's right. In grade 6 through 12 will be issued as grade book updates to the 3rd and 6th week of each marking period to the district secure parent. For grades K through 5, interims will be issued halfway through each trimester.
Well, and then that's interesting because you put the district secure parent portal, and that was our question. For grades K through 5, interim reports will be issued halfway through the trimester. So right now, we don't issue them through the parent portal, but that's what,
And that's why I left it out.
okay. So like, so we're assuming it's paper.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, I got you.
Yeah, I just wrote through the parent portal
Yeah,
for the
okay,
3 to 6, because
okay,
that's how it's done.
okay.
You wanna call it interim / progress reports and not, because is the 3 through 6 really an interim report? Wanna call it progress report? What's that? I don't know.
And I don't know that we need to find it down to this, example, but
Yes, we
for like, for special education, it is progress reporting, right? It's not interim reporting, it's progress reporting. So I mean, maybe that progress / progress report might be helpful because there is progress reporting for our students who evaluate.
As a suggestion, Nicole?
Or do we want to distinguish the two?
Yeah, that's true too.
I think that just supposed to just see it as progress, right? Before it's
Yeah.
not interim, that's right.
Interim, it's in progress. Yeah, I know, right? Like,
We can know that progress.
Yeah, I think we think of it as progress reporting at the elementary level.
Yeah.
Right.
we can talk about it. I don't know if it's something that we want to waste more. It's 3:30. So,
So if we change it there later in the K through 12 interim.
yeah, maybe we just. Really,
Yeah,
yeah,
as
you
long as
should,
everybody understands what we're talking about.
so I added a comment that staff had a concern with property maintenance to the board after I talked to Lisa. So Meg, you added change promptly a reasonable time under the circumstances.
I had to
Staff though are here, so
provide,
Concerns.
it was just my thought.
Promptly. Oh, yeah. Yes.
it was funny at the DAC meeting yesterday. I mentioned that I say to parents, 48 to 72 hours if you don't hear back from me in 48 to 72 hours. And the student was sitting next to me and she smiled. And I said, I've said that to your mom, didn't I? And she said, yes, you have.
One other concern, question that someone had, I'm going back up to supplemental
Yeah, yeah,
communication. Was what does it mean to be a significant decline? So
That I think we could articulate within the regulation.
Yeah.
I have a recommendation that I put in there. Yeah, there is. So in the regulation, I've created some recommendations for people to use as examples to have starting. And I put it down like, I think what I added was like a 10-point decline within, I kind of like gave a substantive example of what you could call a substantive change,
Yeah.
right? It's not like a 2 or 3 point standard, change. It was like 10 points or something clear like that.
Oh,
Or
so not.
not doing homework.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think in the regulation, I gave examples for people to discuss. So, but that would be in the regulation. I don't think we want to clarify it in this.
Yeah.
Because then if you want to change it, maybe we'll try to change it.
Right.
Anything we missed, anything we feel like I want to get out now. Do you feel that this helps support the communication structures? Is there anything we missed today? You feel this was successful?
If anything else comes up later, certainly, email, policy, planning, board. Yes,
Yeah.
As Frank mentioned, we're going to watch this or wait till the next meeting, which gives between now and then certainly for any further feedback you may.
Laura, do you want to bring something up? or-
No.
Okay. Anyone?
So, the teams did seem to think that they like the fact that families were partnership with their students. Seems like that. Did have a parent who PLC, and, she said that as a parent, she wanted to see grades and know whether or not it's reflective of like the capacity of my child. Like, is my child getting a C because they did everything they possibly could, and this is what they're capable of, or did they get a C because they're.
How do you, that's a hard one to measure, right?
Right, but I think that's where maybe where it comes in with the product versus the process.
Well, it seems to me that the parent who's that interested in the solution, they're gonna reach out and the accountability and responsibility for both ways.
Thank you for saying.
Well,
So.
You're
parent-
totally right.
The reality is that if those questions are being highlighted, certainly more welcome to reach out and ask that question. But I don't think it's reasonable to expect educators to provide that detailed explanation in every single.
Well, if-
assessment.
And if it was probably to Dave's point, right, if it were necessary, teachers have the ability to put that in the comment. And
I also think school counselors, and I want to hear from both of you before we leave real quick, is you deal with this all the time. Like, if there's gonna be a concern or a call, you're getting it, right? Like, let's be honest. So I want to be like, from your viewpoint, what, is there anything we're missing here? Because you're the ones that are on the, I mean, the teachers are on the front lines, but sorry, you're the ones getting the phone calls, right? Like, let's be honest.
I think for me, the building level is gonna be more important than the district level.
Is there anything in here that you feel is restricting or not supporting the building level to help kind of get this moving?
No, I think that all of this makes sense to me, especially after hearing everybody go through it and, talk about HPs. I think being very interesting to see like the regulations and what all the different departments come up with next, because that's obviously the part that
Right, because
I'm gonna have to like really have to.
we get parents that
understand.
call us and say, I don't understand my kid's global grade. I pull up Dave's grade book and I'm like, this is not you.
It's a math.
You're just next to me. I'm like, I don't understand how he's grading. I don't know how quizzes and tests and homeworks are weighted. So the building level is gonna be,
And my recommendation in the regulation that you guys will see is that it's through Department of Building Approval. If that then means that maybe over summer work, maybe over other times, like we just have to work on it, right? Like, it's gonna have, this is a work in progress. People are gonna have to take time to really,
Yeah. and Lisa's working towards this too, but having a syllabus for every class. So like right now, Lisa's got a Google Drive where there's everyone's high school, their syllabi is in there. So I had a kid in my office, she was asking about her earth science grade, and I was like, well, let's look up how much your quizzes are worth. Went to the Google Drive, pulled up the syllabus, and look, oh, look, they're worth X amount of your grade. Like, that is super helpful.
tool for you.
Yes.
We miss anything.
I didn't need yours.
Thank you, everybody. I think this has been extraordinarily helpful. I mean, it's an exercise. I think it's highly worth it. Some points a year from stakeholders. Where necessary and appropriate. Like, you can incorporate them,
We really appreciate you being here on a Friday and we do 30.
Yeah.
Seriously. I'm gonna stop the recording.